I've never normally cared for politics much. I've always been much more inclined towards sort of cultural, social, and spiritual issues. I've never been much for paying attention to what politicians have to say about anything really, and that feeling extends towards their legacy media and like the so-called free press. Like I've never really taken any of it too seriously, apart from one time when, admittedly, I took a more political stance when I voted for Brexit. Remember in the referendum years ago, and that in itself was like largely influenced by more meta-political undercurrents with the alternative right at the time. It wasn't so much informed by mainstream media, like at all. So, but recently with Restore, I've somewhat softened a little bit in the political arena. In that, look, right, ultimately, like I think long term, there most likely isn't a political solution to the kind of crisis that we're in. Like very long term perspective, and that's a view that essentially kind of prefigures any kind of political viewpoint. It goes beyond that, right? I think ultimately we need to look outside of politics for answers to the perennial questions of like Western civilizational decline. However, however, with Restore, I feel like if there was ever like a final chapter on like the remnants of a political solution for the UK, like maybe Restore have at least the traces, like the beginnings of a foundation for a viable political sort of nationalist answer to some of the generational questions and conundrums that we have. I mean, they're seemingly uncompromising on the immigration question, at least regarding illegal immigration, right? They're campaigning for mass repatriation, like millions must go. It's a prominent slogan of theirs. Rupertlowe seems indefatigable, and he's impressively authoritative. He is a commanding presence and I think a respectable demeanour. I think he's likeable. Really, they're the kind of quintessential, like plucky sort of underdog of British politics, right? And I can't help but like them a bit because of it. And I think also he's very kind of interested in the sort of like local issues, like local politics, politics of like representation and community, which is great, obviously. And I can't help but sort of like root for them a bit, and why not, right? Like it can't hurt. It's not like I'm putting all my eggs in one basket, and if Restore fail, like that's it. Like oh no, my life's over now. Like how do I go on? Like we're all gonna go extinct now? Like no. They're an outsider bet. They're a likable, exciting, albeit massive underdog, like gamble. And I hope they win. I think they have at least a small chance of doing so. Now, like, are they going to win? Like specifically at Makerfield at this by-election? I mean, if like the odds are anything to go by, just seeing the screen here, then no, they're not. But polls are just polls. You never really know what's going to happen. Like particularly as polls are never accurate. They're always wrong. They're always misapplied and misconstrued to represent a kind of like it's just fiction. It's a sort of like a collectivized kind of rationalized prediction of what people think should happen, not what will actually happen on the day. I mean, the polls at the end of the day they're just gay numbers is all. Like that's it. When it comes to the vote, right, a lot of people vote emotionally, as they should, right? You should vote for the person who you want to win, who you most like, and who you believe is standing up for you, who represents you at least somewhat, right? And for the first time in Restore, we may be getting people that most closely resemble us and are fighting for us, right? Like the people of Great Britain. I mean, like, the shock, right? It's not too much to ask for, is it? I mean, it's crazy to think that even saying that, like implying any sort of like kind of residual nativism, anything like that, that galvanizes that, that kind of like smug, like Pavlovian performative reflexive justification, like to denounce and decry, and this is from the mainstream media, like as like extremists, even though all you're doing is really just standing up for yourself, like your family, your own community, like its history, our shared history, like which they think we don't deserve because basically we're just subhuman gammon to them, presumably. Well, to hell with them, right? If you like a political candidate, you like Restore, why not give them a chance? Give them a vote. Like, it will make a small difference. I mean, and lots of people deciding to make a small difference could potentially add up to a huge difference. And that's a difference which could maybe, like, could shock the world, right? And if we, like, again, look at the odds now, they're about 20 to 1 averaging, I would say, which isn't terrible, right? Reform are sort of standing at about 7 to 1 odds to win. And as a result of these odds, what the analysts seem to be implying, like, what the vaunted political class seem to think, is that Andy Burnham, so-called self-proclaimed King of the North, right, he's going to pip the Reform candidate at this by-election because of Restore taking a sizable percentage of the Reform vote, therefore effectively enabling a Labour victory with Andy Burnham, right, which is a vote for Andy Burnham over Keir Starmer in the forthcoming electoral race that's going to be triggered. I think it's a cynical analysis to think like that. It's not a strategic one, right? Reform winning by voting strategically is not going to help the people of Britain in the way that Restore potentially could. Now, I mean, there may be some good coming from a Reform government, right? Like the collapse of the Conservatives and the end of the fucking Boris wave effect, right? That would be good. But in many ways, Reform will probably just make things worse in the end. Like, they're terrified of being called racist, so all of the problems posed by mass immigration, they don't go anywhere. Like, in fact, they probably just get more and more deeply entrenched over time. But Restore, seemingly at least, like they're a breath of fresh air, right? They're unashamedly campaigning for mass deportations, and this would be a big first step if Britain were to ever recover again as like a once great nation. And voting for Reform won't achieve that, right? Farage really is just a mirage here. He's an oasis on the horizon, just titillating us with visions of the promised land, but ultimately it's not real, right? It's just all a kind of national hallucination, like a boomer indulgence, frankly, that projects its own kind of squalid and feverish NIMBYism and conflates it interchangeably with a kind of posturing, like, hardline stance on border control. It's not the same thing, and it's all without foundation, right? It isn't real, and it's ultimately just locked within a kind of liberal political paradigm, right? It's doomed to political failure. It isn't strong enough, but Restore just might be strong enough. Now, the article here on screen, I'm just bringing it up now, makes an interesting point about Restore's sort of supposed like similarities to the BNP and their electoral success 15 years ago. What the BNP had, back in 2010 and at Makerfield. So, it says here, Restore's Britain's flagship policy is mass deportation of settled migrants, though its official policy documents focus on criminals. Millions must go. And again, this is what obviously Restore kind of slogan here with. Both the ethnic nationalist language and extreme mass deportation proposals of Restore Britain most closely resemble parties of the far right, in particular the British National Party, right, winning over 500,000 votes in the 2010 general election before disintegrating soon afterwards. And one of the places where BNP's message found a substantial audience was Makerfield. Here it just goes on talking about the successes in local elections. Party fielded candidates in all wards but one in the 2010 local elections, and the BNP consistently won an average of about 10% of the vote in the wards where it stood local election candidates, and did even better in the European Parliament election 2009, where nearly 12% of Wigan voters backed BNP leader Nick Griffin's successful bid to become an MEP for the northwest of England. The BNP won 7.4% of the vote in Makerfield in the 2010 general election, finishing 5th. Makerfield thus has recent experience with far-right political campaigning. The potential for a substantial far-right vote on Thursday is clear in both electoral history and current polling. However, while reform looked like the obvious alternative for voters attracted by Lowe's message, we cannot be sure how many Restore voters would back reform if Restore were not available, though they had clear overlaps. The demographics and attitudes of UKIP voters and BNP voters in the 2000s were quite different, and some BNP voters were, and likely still are, deeply alienated people with extreme views, unwilling to back UKIP, perceived as insufficiently hardline, because they are, of course. I suspect something similar may be true for Reform and Restore, and this will be cold comfort, though, for disappointed Reform supporters if it looks like Restore votes would have stood between them and a historic by-election giant killing. So it does make you think, like, are Restore just another BNP doomed to inevitable failure at the polls? Will they ever garner more than 10% at any given election event? I mean, I think this by-election is potentially a barometer for this, right? I think if they at least get 15 to 20%, say, that would be hugely significant in the way of momentum gathering for Restore. I mean, that would be big. And historically very important for a hard-right political nationalist movement. It would be. It'd be exciting. I mean, who knows? Like, what if there was a miracle at Makerfield and Restore actually won? Or at least take all the votes from Reform. Like, imagine the possibilities, like the future that could be within our grasp if they could somehow win it. I mean, you never know. I mean, they may be the underdog, but every dog has his day, right? And just to finish off, I'll just pull up a profile. This is on Restore's website of the candidate being fielded at Makerfield. She's called Rebecca Shepherd, and I'll just read a little bit here for you. So this is from rupertlowe. I'm proud to announce local businesswoman Rebecca Shepherd as our Restore Britain candidate for the Makerfield constituency. Rebecca has spent most of her adult life living and working in the Wigan borough, where she's built and run her own small business. Through that experience, she understands firsthand the pressures facing local businesses and working people across the country. Like so many residents, Rebecca has seen the growing impact of rising costs, increasing legislation, red tape, bureaucracy, which continue to make everyday life more challenging for ordinary people trying to work hard, supporting their families and staying afloat. Put simply, she understands what local men and women are going through. This is the type of person we need in politics, not career politicians, but genuine people with real life experience. It just goes on. Rebecca is standing for Makerfield because she believes local people deserve honest representation, accountability, and someone prepared to fight for the interests of the community rather than their own political careers. So she seems like a likeable, normal, honest, everyday woman, right? She could be a man, right? Or his sister. Like, why not give her a vote? It must take some balls, like going for Restore, running for them. It does take courage to do it. So why not give her a vote, right? Give her a chance. If you think Restore are standing up for your best interests, just give them a vote. If you think Restore are standing up for your best interests, why not give them a shot? If they win, then you'll be a part of that and you'll help make history. I am not one for gambling, but it does feel like, rooting for like the wild underdog, it's exciting, right? It's fun. Like, forget all the strategic voting crap, right? Like, the difference between Burnham winning and Starmer staying in power is like the difference between having constipation and diarrhea, right? It doesn't matter what you've got. Both are objectively bad, right? So the notion of strategic voting is asinine, to me at least, anyway. So vote with your heart. Vote for Restore. Let's see what happens, right? Again, I'm like normally I'm like viscerally like apolitical, funnily enough. So at least vaguely a bit amused about like doing a video like this. But I'm going to be in the future talking a lot more about stuff on this channel, like outside of politics, for solutions to a modern shared crises, on all sorts of levels. But tomorrow, if you're in Makerfield, just this one little time, give Restore a shot, because why not? You got nothing to lose, but maybe everything to gain, and it could be the start of something big. So just this one time, give politics a little chance. When it fails, it's like, oh well, we've lost nothing. So we'll see, right? So with that, thanks for watching. Good luck to Restore, and I'll see you later.